You don't see many cars in Khiva. For the most part, they're stacked outside the city's walls like shoes on someone's front porch. To access this former city-state, once ruled by local kings or khans, you walk, which to my taste is one of the things that makes coming here special.
There are some treed areas inside the old city, such as the one where I'm walking now, next to a hotel, I believe, that's behind the walls of an old madrasa, because I see lots of sheets on the clothesline. This is the desert, despite it being an oasis, so there's lots of wind. So unless you're walking around here between buildings, it's going to be windy. You should bear in mind that while the city was founded at least 2,500 years ago, very little remains here from beyond the 10th century CE. Most of what you see among the impressive adobe, brick, and tile structures was rebuilt in the 17 and 1800s.
That includes historic Khiva's inner sanctum, the fortress and palace complex that provided Khiva's khans extra protection.
I've stepped into the Konya Ark, the citadel or fortress portion of the walled city that was added here in 1688 and greatly expanded over a period of more than a century. Over time, it became the administrative center of the khans who ruled Khiva, and eventually their private residence with the addition of the palace in the early 1800s. You can walk through this complex of mostly barren chambers where the khans resided, and which included everything from the Khanate Supreme Court to a mint, and of course, a harem. For many visitors, the most interesting part of this complex is here in the palace, completed in 1806. I'm in an inner courtyard of the palace, which during the days of the khans was a place where, during the hottest nights of the year, the ruler could, if he wished, sleep under the stars in a royal yurt set up on the platform that you see here, this brick elevated space, especially for that purpose. Almost difficult to walk around in this inner courtyard today because there are crowds of people that come in and out of here, and souvenir shops set up on the inside of it. Of course, the most amazing aspect of this inner courtyard, and indeed in the entire citadel itself, is the throne room with its brilliant blue decorative tiles and long pillars on the portico. And I'm about to step inside the throne room to get a glimpse of it. The beautiful gilded throne that you see in the background is a replica. The original was hauled off by the Russians during the time of the Tsars in the late 1800s. And if you wanted to see it today, you would have to go to the Kremlin. Even though it's possible to walk through this place, it's not easy because it's laid out in a kind of labyrinth. Of course, every fortress in ancient times and onward has, in the Arab world, had a mosque, and I've entered the official mosque of the citadel, which is off yet another inner plaza. It is relatively small, but with very intricate stone-carved pillars holding it up. At the moment, I'm the only person inside this mosque, except for the docent stationed at the door. But one can only imagine how it was in here 2 centuries ago when seeking spiritual guidance. This was the Khan's personal prayer room, essentially. This palace tends to be extremely crowded in spurts, followed by periods of relative solitude, such as at this moment. A tour group just passed through here moments ago. By just waiting them out, it becomes very calm. You can have it all to yourself. This old quarter is less than a square mile, and so you can easily walk from one side to another among the beautiful buildings and courtyards within it. in just a few minutes. For a different perspective, you could also do something else. You can walk the wall itself. Well, I've come to one of the entry points to the wall and have bought my ticket for, I think, 20,000 som, and am about to ascend. But surprise, surprise, take a look at this stairwell. That is one steep set of stairs. Very steep, very narrow. I'm gonna put down the camera and I'll pick it back up when I make it to the top. I don't think I've seen steps that steep any other place I've been. These have you almost crawling on your hands and knees up the stairs. I certainly hope there's another way back down. When you get up here, your perspective of the inner city changes, because of course you're looking down on it and out at it, as opposed to mostly looking up at it at close range in these narrow streets that define the town. There are two sets of walls surrounding Khiva's historic core. There's the wall I'm on that contains the Ichin Kala, the oldest, most inner part of the town. And there's a second perimeter wall outside it that served as a first line of defense against would-be attackers. It has largely been destroyed, although part of it still remains. This wall, at least its foundations, are said to have been built in about 1000 CE. It has been rebuilt numerous times, especially in the 17 and 1800s during the various independent khanates in which local rulers reigned over Khiva and surrounding area. It's not possible to walk completely around the old city on this wall. Rather, it's accessible from the north end and the south end, separate, not connected, because the elevated rampway that was used here during protection of the wall has not survived in the middle. It's necessary, if you want to walk the complete experience, to leave the north end, which loops around on three sides, walk to the south end of the city and climb up on the wall there. This wall is about 10 meters tall on average. Of course, it's made of the same materials as much of the construction here. Mud brick, the adobe, mixed with straw, and you can literally see that mixture. It's still in very good shape. Of course, it's being preserved historically, but you can see spots, such as where I'm coming up to, where the adobe's veneer sort of disappears. I'll show you. It's the mud as it looks on the interior without the decorative facing, so to speak. I'm going to do it, although I'm not looking forward to it. Almost straight down on these steps. But what are you going to do? You can't stay up here. So that's what I just came down. Mostly on my butt. Among the monuments here, none is more iconic than this minaret tower that you see behind me, the Kalta Minor, which, impressive as it is, was famously never finished. It was meant to be the largest and tallest minaret in the Muslim world when construction began in 1852 by Muhammad Amin, the Khan or ruler of Khiva at the time. But the Khan led his troops off to war in Iran, and in 1855 he was killed in battle. The project halted, and his successor chose not to resume it. This tower is 29 meters tall, but it was intended to be 110 meters. The numbers themselves may not mean much, but when you think of the great minarets you see throughout the Islamic world, just keep this in mind. The Qutb Minor in New Delhi is 73 meters, and it is said to be the world's tallest minaret. Still, this structure, which complements the beautiful madrasa beside it that the Khan also built, is super imposing. And it's still the only minaret, or maybe we should say half minaret, in the world covered completely with glazed tiles. The tiles have their own story. They were applied under the close observation of Khiva poet, historian, and statesman Mohammad Reza Ogahi, an important figure in Uzbekistan history. Ogahi embedded verses of his poetry in some of the tiles. But during the Soviet era, the tile pieces containing the poetry were ripped off the building for ideological purposes. But since Uzbekistan independence in 1991, the Islamic poetry has since been restored. Many of the old homes have been remodeled and converted and serve as homestays or guest houses. Some of the madrasas that are historic in nature have been converted to hotels, and other smaller structures that are of some age are now restaurants. And of course, as you walk these streets, you sense after a while that you're in a sort of commercial Lollapalooza. Location is everything, they say, and you certainly can't beat the location that vendors have been given here. They really are decorating the lanes and narrow streets throughout the old quarter with tents and wares of all kinds. Silk items are abundant, but there are wood carvings and other artisanry in addition to the sort of usual souvenir trinkets that you see sold everywhere. Well, this does it for me from Uzbekistan and the other countries I've visited on this trip across Central Asia. Thanks for subscribing and for liking the videos. Tomorrow I fly from the nearby town of Urgench back to Tashkent, where I'll depart for another series of videos on the other side of the Caspian Sea in the Caucasus. Hope to see you soon, beginning in Azerbaijan's capital, Baku. Until then, ciao and peace.